Have I ever mentioned that I really like the Discworld books by the late great Terry Pratchett? Well, I do. And there are a lot of books, and I mean a whole lot of them. If you ever want to get into a series of fantasy novels that seems to span decades, go for Discworld. There's like 40 of them. There's even a bunch of adaptations in forms of movies. There's some more on the way. There are some cartoons we never speak of because they were kind of I think they were drawn by the same people that did the Zelda CDI game. But there aren't really all that many video games. There's the one I covered in a history show a couple of years ago. There's its sequel. There's Discworld Noir, and there was The Color of Magic, made as a space adventure in the mid-80s. Only this and nothing more, but there should be more. And this is the top 7 Discworld games that should exist. A show dedicated to revealing to the world the potential that Discworld would have in the medium of video games. Games that would not only just use the theme, the setting of Discworld, but would be a celebration of it. They would be enriched by being in Discworld and maybe give some people that didn't have the chance to read the books an opportunity to do so, much like the Witcher games did with the Witcher books, though I kind of think Discworld is a bit more popular than the Witcher, the books I mean. Certainly a lot more approachable because you didn't have to wait a decade for them to be translated into something other than Polish or Russian. Anyway, I'm sure that you all have your own ideas of what would make a really good Discworld game. So you can start writing them in the comments right now. We'll compare notes at the end. So here are my suggestions. Number 7, a procedural crime game with the City Watch. Now when I say procedural, I don't mean that the crimes are generated on the fly based on an algorithm. No. I mean that it's about procedure, it's about investigating. Sort of like LA Noire would be, but instead of talking to people, you talk to trolls, you talk to that guy with the duck on his head, with the colorful characters of Ankh-Morpork, while you play a character in the City Watch. Now exactly who would you be playing? Well, maybe a new recruit, or maybe you could switch between different characters in the City Watch, each with their own abilities. For example, Carrot would talk really nice to people and they would do what he says because he's that kind of person. Vimes would threaten them. Angua would make sure that they don't need to be threatened, they're already scared. And Detritus would just loom over them until they gave up. Something like that. But because this is a story about the watch, it's never actually about the crime itself, okay? It is about the crime itself, but not as a petty, insignificant crime. No. It all ties into something deeper, a larger story with a bigger scope, something involving somebody's attempt to take over a city, or to cause a war, or to do something nefarious. There's really good storytelling potential there. Hey, you could even just adapt, probably not cards, because that's kind of been done already in the first Discworld adventure game, the one with Eric Idle, but you could adapt Men-at-Arms or The Truth, but from the perspective of the City Watch. Or, you can make something new, something original in that setting. Just imagine it. Exploration, investigation, a bit of an adventure game feel vibe to it, but the puzzles will not make you want to strangle anybody. That'd be amazing. Number 6, an action RPG where you play as a hero. Could be hack and slash in terms of action. I mean, could be a bit more involved, could be open world, could be something else, but at the core of it, there will be something very, very important, a cornerstone of the Discworld universe, and that is the code. Yeah, you can make an action RPG where you play as a hero and fight demons in any kind of setting, but Discworld has its code, and the code dictates everything. Heroes live and die by the code. Villains live and die by the code. You learn to respect the code, and the code will respect you. Break it, and you'll have a better chance of rolling a 7 with a single die. You actually do have a really good chance of rolling a 7 with a single die because it's Well, it's what read The Last Hero. It's a great book. Hey, if you want to take this to the maximum level possible, have the hero not just be a random hero. Have it be Cohen the Barbarian. Have him be Cohen the Barbarian from when he's young, like when he's just starting out, to when he is in The Last Hero. Well, that would make it a really long game, and I mean, woohoo. He was very old in that book, but his journey, and especially the end of it, the last hero bit, that is just one of the best books I ever read about being a hero, I mean. And then he could go beyond it, because, he goes beyond it, because he's a hero. Number 5, a city management sim starring Veterinary, or one of Veterinari's assistants, or whoever takes over every time somebody tries to assassinate him. He's been sort of almost assassinated twice in the books, during which he wasn't really feeling up to snuff to run the city, so probably somebody had to take over. So you could have you play either as him, which would pose the problem of what happens when you fail at something, because Veterinary doesn't do that. He outsmarts dragons. He's got a famous line when one of his assistants says, don't you know that dragons have a silver tongue? And he says something like, oh, only silver. Shame. So maybe playing as him would be a bit of a stretch, but playing as somebody that has to replace him temporarily and will probably get punished severely if they do a bad job of it, that would work. And of course, you're gonna be managing Ankh-Morpork, which is a horrible, horrible city. I mean, the river that runs through it, the Ankh, isn't so much running through it as crawling through it. And the water isn't so much wet as it is crunchy. And it's got its guilds and its various factions all vying for power with it, and we have to keep them in check. Maybe expand some areas by building new stuff. Maybe hope the wizards don't blow them up. There's potential for a city builder game in here. Actually, I know there's a board game, and you do have a giant map of Ankh-Morpork, and I don't know if it's actually based on anything that's about city building. Seem to remember some component of it there, though. And then there's the map of Ankh-Morpork itself that was in the first Discworld game, which sort of evokes the idea that this maybe should be a city builder. It can be. Or at least a city management builder, something like that. We could have it be set in Lancra, but I don't think Lancra is as exciting to manage as Ankh-Morpork itself. Number 4, a Cut Me On Throat Dibbler business sim. Now, Cut Me On Throat Dibbler, CMOT Dibbler for short, is a entrepreneur in Discworld, one of the first ones, I think. He sells primarily something that can be described as being hot dogs. It is not yet confirmed if eating them is safe. Well, actually, we know it's not safe, but to what degree is unsafe is still not known. Anyway, he does a lot of things in an attempt to get rich. And over the course of 40 books, he dabbles in a lot of different areas. He goes into movies, he goes into print, journalism, one of the first ones actually. He basically, I don't think he invents it, he's just forced to write it. Tabloids, clickbait, before it was cool on the internet. And just trying to run a business, any sort of enterprise in Ankh-Morpork is bound to cause a lot of problems, because it's Ankh-Morpork, it's got strange rules. The thieves will rob you if they have a license to do so, and if you haven't paid I think it was a monthly or a yearly. I think you got a discount if you paid the yearly tax to not get robbed. But you also have a limit to how often you can get robbed. And then there's the off-the-books robberies. But anyway, you could try and run a business either as CMOT Dibbler or some stooge he convinced into helping him set up some business of some kind. And you could learn the basics of economy, if it would be more of an educational style game, or a bit more of a roguelike game where your business will eventually and without doubt cause something to explode or some ancient evil to rise from the depths and destroy the city if you don't do it right. There would be a challenge. I mean, even without that, there would be a challenge of making a functional business profitable as well in somewhere like Ankh-Morpork, because again, it's kind of a horrible place to live. I mean, you could start off your own dwarf bread bakery / arms factory, because they're kind of the same thing. Dwarf bread is more of a weapon of war than it is meant for nourishment. And because you would be running a business, you would be involved in all the political aspects of the game itself. So it would run parallel in a way to the city management sim, sort of like Transport Tycoon was, where you could actually take control of some cities. But in this case, if you tried, the veterinarian would probably kill you, and he doesn't mess around. The main reason why veterinary rarely gets blamed for attempted murder is that he never attempts it, he just does it. And having that as a challenge to not get killed by a veterinary by doing something he doesn't like, that would make any sort of business sim really difficult, or at least enjoyable, fun, exhilarating. Number 3, a Magicka style game with the wizards. Now here's the thing, Magicka may be filled with all sorts of references to pretty much anything you can find in the interwebs and in pop culture, but the main component of it, the wizard bit, that just screams Discworld. Like it looks as if it was an adaptation of it, because it's filled with idiots, the universe aiming, it's filled with idiots that wield incredible power and use it for stupid things. That's exactly what the Academy of the Unseen Arts does in Discworld. You can even see that in the Discworld game. The majority of them are idiots concerned mostly with big lunches, sleeping, and abusing Rincewind. And their power, of course. They really enjoy abusing their power. They actually used to go overboard because in the earlier books, the wizards would just kill themselves, and not themselves, but their superiors, as a way to move up the ladder. It was called Dead Man's Shoes. That sort of stopped when Red Cully came along, because he sleeps with a crossbow under his pillow and will shoot you. Now, why would it have to be a Magicka style game? Well, it's because magic in Discworld can be a bit kooky, and the component system that you could see in Magicka would kind of fit well. As for what exactly you would do, well, for one, survive each day, because being a wizard is kind of difficult since there are other wizards around there doing their own thing. And two, you could go on an adventure, I guess. Haven't really thought this through, mostly because there are a lot of things the wizards could do. They could go to XXXX, they could go to that other place that they went to that one time. There are a lot of options, a whole lot of options. But the essence has to be that the wizards can blow themselves up with their own magic. That is an integral part of what a wizard game set in the Discworld would be about. Number 2, an educational game in a round world. Now, this is also sort of starring the wizards because the Dean made Round World by accident, and the idea of Round World is that it's our world existing as a simulation, well, not a simulation, but as an accident in a pocket universe in their world. And the idea of the Science of Discworld books is that the wizards are using their logic with their world's rules to try and figure out how does this round world work. And you could adapt that into a video game, an educational one where the wizards go about, muck things up through time and history, and across whatever happens, the people playing children could learn stuff. It'll be a bit more, friendly than just reading the books. It would have the visual element, the interactive element, and I think it could really be quite useful. Now, sure, I'm not exactly entirely certain how you would implement some chapters, like with quantum physics and radiation nuclear stuff, and there's the one with the ant. But the majority of it can be adapted in the form of a video game or several video games. It would work. Trust me on this one. It could work, it would work, it will work. And number 1 is The Witcher, but with Granny Weatherwax. Now, hear me out. Granny Weatherwax is sort of a Witcher when you think of, well, she's a witch, but she does kind of what the Witcher does, which is go around and save people from their own stupidity or from evil creatures. Now, technically, for the most part, she doesn't go around, she stays at home, and people come to her to pester her about doing stuff. But from time to time, she will go to different places, like Genoa, where she would help those there to defeat the enemy, which was her. And sometimes the danger comes to her home, like the elves, the vampires, which she defeats with a combination of her great magic, her power, but quite often by outsmarting the enemy. And she helps those around her again with her magic, with her knowledge. and by subtly reminding them that they're idiots and maybe should try and live as better people, which is something that Geralt does quite often. There are a lot of Granny Weatherwax stories that can be adapted into video games, multiples of them actually. Witches Abroad is a good start, but I think maybe the first one that should be adapted would be the one with the elves. Though if it's the one with the elves, then they're gonna have to introduce McGrath better. Maybe just do them both, like Witches Abroad and the one with the elves, lords and ladies, and have fun with it. There could be quests where, main quests where she has to beat up the Queen of the Elves, side quests where she has to find out what is causing the death of some sheep somewhere, or save some child from death and just stare down death, like actual death, because in this world death is a person-ish that comes around and talks to people when they die, and you can't really bargain with him. He will just do his job, then get on Binky and go home. Actually, I think Rincewind can bargain with him. He tried at first, but it sort of was retconned that wasn't that he was bargaining with, but a demon that fills in for that when he has other stuff to do. Also, Rincewind has like a really weird life timer, like sand thing, because it flows in different directions simultaneously and won't seem to actually run out, because he's been in really, really horrible situations. But anyway, imagine The Witcher, but with good old Granny Weatherwax. And apart from the gameplay itself, it could also have something akin to branching storylines, because as Geralt himself struggles to maintain the path of the Witcher, neutrality, the lesser evil, Granny Weatherwax throughout the books will often struggle with the cackling, the darkness within that threatens to turn her into a power-hungry mad witch. Okay, yeah, now that I think of it, you could start it with the Weird Sisters, because that's where everybody's being introduced. But that doesn't fit so well, because that's more of a Macbeth adaptation, whereas the other ones, they're kind of more fantasy adaptations, fantasy-styled stories, which would fit well with the Witcher theme, since those are all fairy tales as well, adapted into a more serious context. What I'm saying is, it would work. It would absolutely work. Well, that would be my recommendations for what Discworld Games should exist. Hopefully you've written down some of your own, and we can just talk about what would make a great Discworld game. Probably one that doesn't have puzzles which make you want to just kind of give up and stop enjoying the game. Goodbye.